Live on C-SPAN. Search, watch, clip, and share. It's Washington your way.
The House is coming back in for a couple of votes on measures debated earlier. While we wait, an update on Representative Gabrielle Giffords. Her office sent out a press release today saying that the Congresswoman will attend President Obama's State of the Union address tomorrow night. Her attendance marks one of the final acts as a member of Congress. Now the U.S. House.
Resume on motions to suspend the rules previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. H.R. 3117 and H.R. 1141, in each case by the yeas and nays. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3117 as amendment, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 255, H.R. 3117, a bill to grant the Secretary of the Interior permanent authority to authorize states to issue electronic duck stamps and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
2 votes in this series, this one on a bill that authorizes the Interior Department to permanently continue the electronic duck stamp program, which requires all hunters 16 and older to buy and carry a duck stamp if they hunt on federal lands. Coming up later this week, the House plans to begin work on repealing part of the health care law dealing with long-term care services. And, as we mentioned just a moment ago, President Obama delivers his State of the Union address tomorrow night. We spoke with a Capitol Hill reporter for an overview of the week in Congress.
Jake Sherman is a congressional reporter for Politico. Both chambers are back for legislative work today. What's on the legislative schedule for this week? Why don't we start with the House?
The House has a number of things it's working on over the next week, and obviously this is a short legislative year, but the FAA renewal is something they're going to be wrestling with over the next couple of days and weeks. It's the FAA saw a partial shutdown last year. Leaders are trying to avoid that in both chambers, so that's going to be coming up. One of the big other items in the House is going to be the highway and infrastructure bill, which leaders are under increasing pressure to wrap up before the end of the year. But in the Senate, also, Senate and House together, there's a conference committee on the payroll tax holiday, which expires by the end of February. It was a huge fight at the end of last year, so that's going to be kind of dominating the dialogue, dominating kind of the overall narrative of Congress over the next couple weeks and months. So that's kind of something that we all have our eyes on.
Well, of course, President Obama comes to the Capitol to deliver his annual State of the Union speech tomorrow. What do members of Congress want to hear?
Well, that's always an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, Republicans always come out of the State of the Union with their president saying we agreed with 90% of what he says and disagree with 90% of what he does. He's expected to kind of use the speech in Kansas, where he talked a lot about everyone paying their fair share and shared responsibility. That's supposed to be the theme of this State of the Union, which rings very true with Democrats, and obviously Republicans will say he's simply trying to raise our taxes. So that is something we also expect to hear reprised tomorrow night.
Are there any areas of agreement across the aisle where we might see legislative results in this presidential election year? And if so, what are they? And if not, why not?
I think the biggest thing that we'll see is this payroll tax holiday resolved. Republicans are very wary about fighting this battle again. They knew it was a political loser at the end of the year. Eric Cantor, the majority leader, has said he doesn't understand how politics got in the way of a tax cut. So I think there's general consensus that that needs to be extended. Now, it depends where the Republicans are going to pick a fight on this. They want reforms to unemployment insurance, and we'll see if they get those. On top of this, they want to jumpstart the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline again. Unclear if they'll get that. But I think the major piece of legislation that we'll see move over the next 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, is the payroll tax holiday for the rest of the year.
What else are you tracking?
The FAA thing is very interesting. That will be, something that needs to get done. The FAA needs to be funded. Both parties don't want to shut down. And this energy and infrastructure bill is an attempt by Republicans in Congress to jam the president, so to speak, to have him come out against an infrastructure spending project, which they don't think is politically palatable. And members are really yearning and hungry for something to bring home to their constituents in this election year and say, look, we did this. They're sick and tired of saying we have 30 bills the Senate hasn't acted on. That is something that's not a great message for Republicans. So they really want something to hold on to say this is what we've done and this is how we've tried to improve your lives.
Jake Sherman, thanks for joining us. Jake is a congressional reporter for Politico.
Thanks.
We're going to have President Obama's State of the Union speech live on both C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2 tomorrow night. Our coverage gets underway here on C-SPAN at 8 p.m. Eastern, including the President's speech, the Republican response by Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels, and your phone calls. That's here on C-SPAN. Meanwhile, on C-SPAN 2, we'll have the speech along with tweets from members of Congress as the President gives his address. And that'll start live on C-SPAN 2 at 9 p.m. Eastern. There was a March for Life rally in Washington, D.C. today. Participants marched from the National Mall to the Supreme Court. House Speaker John Boehner was among a number of lawmakers who spoke.
Well, Nellie, thank you, and let me say thanks to all of you for braving the elements today. I'm truly honored to be with all of you, and I come here today as the Speaker of the whole House of Representatives and the leader of the bipartisan pro-life majority in the United States House of Representatives. With your help, this bipartisan majority is standing up for life and working to restore the damage with regard to Roe. We are heeding the voice of the people who overwhelmingly oppose taxpayer funding of abortion. The House has passed bipartisan legislation to codify the Hyde Amendment across our entire government, and will continue to press the Senate for a vote. You know, it's an honor for me to serve with men and women committed to protecting the sanctity of life. But we may disagree in a lot of other areas and sometimes starkly, but we are one on the same when it comes to this issue. Because human life is not a political or economic commodity, and defending life is not a member of party, it's about standing on principle. In that spirit, I think it's important we take a moment to reflect on the first principles that bring us all here today. We're blessed to gather on this national mall, hallowed ground kept hallowed by the footsteps and echoes of the past. Here, 1/2 a century ago, John F. Kennedy let the world know Americans would pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship to keep freedom alive and well. And like many of you, my family of Kennedy Democrats was moved by these words. I'm from what you might call a big family. I've got 11 brothers and sisters. I'm sure it wasn't easy for my mother to have 12 of us, but I'm glad we're all here. And respect for life at every stage was instilled in us early on. My heart still grows restless at the story in Scriptures that says, whatever do you do to the least of my people, you do unto me. No life is an island, and we're all taught that. We're all taught to extend a helping hand, especially to those in need. So I've never considered being pro-life a label or a political position. It's just who I am. And it's not just that I am pro-life, it's that we as a people are pro-life. And if you're like me, and you climb the steps on the other side of the tidal basin, you're awed by Jefferson's immortal words. God who gave us life, gave us liberty. These two founding principles, life and liberty, are intertwined. Together they form the core of our national character. They comprise the standard by which the world looks to us. And when we affirm the dignity of life, we reaffirm our commitment to liberty and freedom. When we don't affirm life, when life is cheapened, weakened, here or abroad, freedom is diminished. Here on this mall, many solemn vows have been made in the long fight for freedom. You know, America is an idea, and our duty is to preserve its blessings, the first and dearest of which is life. That's why Nellie Gray marches on. That's why all of you march on. So let us rise to Nellie's example and raise our voices together in defense of life. Let us pray that more of our countrymen, whether you belong to one political party or no political party, will join this noble cause. God go with all of you today, and God bless these United States of America.
That was from the March for Life rally in Washington today. A couple of Republican presidential candidates released statements about the demonstration. Newt Gingrich, who won the South Carolina primary on Saturday, said, "Thank you for bearing witness today to the incomparable dignity of every human life, born and unborn." And a statement from Mitt Romney, "All of them are marching today in the spirit of compassion and mercy, and I share their commitment to laws that protect the innocent and uphold a culture of life." You can see our coverage of the March for Life rally in our overnight schedule here on C-SPAN and right now at cspan.org. Kevin Hassett of the American Enterprise Institute was on this morning's Washington Journal talking about the current tax rate for private equity income earned by executives.
Kevin Hassett is the Economic Policy Studies Director at the American Enterprise Institute, here to talk about taxing private equity income. Let's just begin with, what does it mean? What does private equity mean?
Sure. Well, basically what happens is that people set up investment funds where there are some folks who are kind of the managers of the fund and other people who are investors. And you and I might put our money into such a fund, and then the managers would take our money and put it to work. And there's lots of different ways that they put it to work. So some funds focus on venture capital, so they go around and look for some cool new idea, and then they invest in that really almost as seed capital often, and then they own a lot of it if it turns out to be something big like Facebook. Other firms are turnaround specialists, and so if there's a company like Kodak right now that's failing, you might expect to see a private equity firm would swoop in and then try to fix them, because if they turn them around, then they can make a profit. And there are a lot of other scenarios that we could think of, but the basic idea is that they either create new businesses or buy old businesses and try to make money.
So that's what Bain Capital did when you gave the
Correct.
example of Kodak. But how much, I mean, you said you and I could contribute toward this, but typically for somebody who's investing in private equity, how much are they investing, and what's that sort of average, if you could, amount?
There are some really small private equity companies, and there are some really, really large ones. I think the big, most successful ones, probably you need a very large amount of money to get in, like maybe $1 million or more, but there's not a fixed rule that rules out smaller investments than that.
So, because we heard so much about Bain Capital, how does that fit into this discussion? What do they do?
Well, yeah, so Bain Capital does all of the above. But one of the things that Bain Capital did when Romney was at Bain Capital was buy troubled firms and then try to turn them around. And so the basic idea is that if a firm is losing money, then maybe they're going to go out of business. You or I could buy them for next to nothing, right? Because they're losing money, so who wants to buy something that's losing money? But if you then go in and make some tough choices, maybe shut a plant over here and so on, then you could turn it into a profitable enterprise and then sell it at a profit. And so sometimes the best bargains are companies that are really mismanaged. And the mismanagement creates an opportunity for a good manager to come in and fix it. The problem, though, is that from the point of view of Romney now politically, is that very often, he might have gone in and taken over a firm that had 1,000 workers, and after they reorganized it, it was down to 600 workers. Probably the correct counterfactual is that they would have lost 1,000 jobs if new management didn't come in. But you could look and see, well, before he went in, there were 1,000. After he went in, there were 600, so he fired 400 people. And that's the kind of soundbite that has been, I think, causing some harm to him on the political campaign.
Well, I don't want to just focus on Bain Capital, but if you're an executive of a private equity firm, why do you have a 15% tax rate?
Oh, yeah. So the private equity income that you get as an executive is taxed a few different ways. And so when you're actually getting salary, then it's taxed the same way that your or my salary is taxed. And but if you get a capital gain, then it's passed through to you with a capital gain treatment.
What do you mean, if you get a capital gain?
Right. So if I'm a private equity guy and we buy this thing and say buy a company, say let's use Kodak as an example. So say we go in and I own 10%, or 10% of my money is in the private equity pool. And we go in and we buy Kodak, and then we make a lot of money by turning it around and selling it at a profit. Then if you buy it for less than you sell it, that difference is a capital gain. And capital gains are taxed at 15%. And there's this misconception out there that private equity firms are somehow treated a lot differently from other firms in society, but it's not true. It's basically treated under sort of normal partnership law, which applies to partnerships that aren't even private equity firms, that if income sort of keeps its status. And so if our income is a capital gain, then it gets treated for tax purposes as a capital gain when it's passed through to the partners. If the income is ordinary income, then it gets passed through as ordinary income.
Would that, though, mean that that executive who was able to get taxed at 15%, does that mean that executive put in capital into the investment, put their own money on the line?
Yeah, that basically what happens is that you get, so the private equity guy will charge an expense fee, often 2% of assets, and that expense fee will pass income on to him that will be taxed at ordinary income rates. But if he has a capital gain, then it's taxed at a capital gain rate, and the way he gets his share of capital gain is really there are two ways. One is that he invests his own money, he or she, in the firm, and the other is that they attribute some share of the profits often to the partners. And so, if you're investing in my firm, I don't have one, I wish I did, but if you're investing in my firm, then we might say, well, look, if I make a $100 capital gain for you, suppose I have no money in the fund, then I'll keep 20 of it, you keep 80 of it. If I lose money, then I get nothing. And then that might be a compensation deal that you agree to. And then when we did that, then when I get my 20 bucks out of the 100, we'd tax that as capital gain as well.
So when you look at the tax record estimated, we won't know until tomorrow when Mitt Romney unveils it for 2010 and 2011. But this is what USA Today put together last week, estimating the taxable income. His taxable income, $9.8 million to about $38.8 million, taxed at regular rates, probably about $5 to $18 million of that, taxed at the 15% capital gains rate, about $5 million to $20 million. What does that mean then to you? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Right. So it's actually so first, of course, Governor Romney's totally obeying all the laws and everything. At least, I mean, we haven't seen the form yet, but I suspect he's a pretty careful guy. And so what happens is that when he has income that's not capital income, so it's not dividends and it's not capital gains, then he pays the same rates that you and I do on our own wages. But if he has income that's capital income, then he pays the same rates that you or I do if we get capital income. And since he's rich, he has more capital income. Capital income taxes are lower than labor income taxes for a reason that's solid. Basically, capital is very mobile internationally. And if you try to have really high tax rates on capital, then it all kind of moves to other countries and so on. And so, economists have all said we should have low taxes on capital because it creates jobs here in the U.S. And enough politicians, really, of both parties have agreed that the case for that is sound, that they've lowered capital taxes. But what it does mean is that somebody who's got lots and lots of wealth on their capital income side, they're going to be paying the lower tax rate than a high-income wage earner. So 15% is there's a lot of the income distribution that's paying a tax like that or lower. The bottom half of the income distribution pays no income tax. So you're already talking sort of the upper half of the income distribution to have a rate like that. But 15% is a lot lower than the rate that I pay on my labor income. But it doesn't upset me, and maybe it's just because I'm a nerdy economist who understands that if we don't make America an attractive place to invest capital, then the capital will go elsewhere and there won't be jobs here.
Let's hear from Robin. She's a Republican in West Plain, Nebraska. You're up first here. We're talking about taxing private equity profits. Go ahead.
Yeah, two questions. Capital income is double taxation. And can you talk about what hedge fund owners like George Soros is?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Robin, can you repeat that?
Robin?
Well, let's just begin with the first thing he said.
Okay.
Is that I think he said capital gains is a double taxation. Would that make sense?
Okay, yeah. There is double taxation. We could talk about when there's single and when there's double taxation. That's a really good thing to talk about because it's a tricky thing. So basically, if I get a capital gain, then that'll be taxed once because it's just a capital gain that I got, and when I put it on my income tax, then I'll pay tax on it. But if I invest in a corporate entity, say you buy a stock and you get some dividends and some capital gains, then there are two layers of taxation. So if the company that you invest in, they pay corporate tax, and then they give you some money, or they hold on to the money and you take a capital gain, and then you pay individual tax. A lot of places around the world, almost every place around the world, integrates the two. So typically in Europe, if a European company pays corporate tax, then the shareholders get kind of credit for that corporate tax when they're charged dividend tax, and the total tax you pay on your income tax statement is sort of a net of what you owe minus sort of what the corporation already paid. In the U.S., we don't really have that kind of integration, and so there's more of a extra layer of tax in the U.S. And it's one reason why capital taxes in the U.S. are a lot higher than they are around the rest of the world.
Linda's a Democrat in Milford, Connecticut. You're up next.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Hassett. Good morning, Greta. You also didn't include that if you have a capital loss, you get to deduct that from your income, which in essence the taxpayers are now subsidizing your loss and your bad bet. And also the only way you can be so-called doubly taxed is on that same capital income is if you make money twice on that initial investment. So you sold the stock, you made some money, you reinvested in another stock and made more money, therefore you're paying taxes again. But that wasn't the real reason, the real question I had.
Well, Linda, before
the question I had was
Linda,
the job.
Hey, Linda, before you go on, I just want Kevin Hassett to respond to that, and I'll come back to you.
Oh, yeah. So Linda's point about
this vote,
capital
the yeas are 373, the nays are 1, 2/3 being present. In the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The House will be in order. Members will take their seats. The House will be in order. Members will please take a seat. The chair will not proceed until all members have taken a seat. The chair will not proceed until all members take a seat. The chair wishes to make a brief announcement concerning floor practice. Members should periodically rededicate themselves to the core principles of proper parliamentary practice that are so essential to maintaining order and deliberacy in the House. The chair believes that a few of these principles bear emphasis today. Members should refrain from trafficking in the well of the House while another member is speaking, or even if the presiding officer is speaking. Members should wear appropriate business attire during all sittings of the House, however brief their presence on the floor might be. You know who you are. Members who wish to speak on the floor should respectfully seek and obtain recognition from the presiding officer, taking the time to do so in proper forms, such as, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute. Members should take care to yield and reclaim their time in an orderly fashion, bearing in mind that the official reporters of the debate cannot properly transcribe two members simultaneously. Members should address their remarks in debate to the presiding officer and not to others in the second person or to some perceived viewing audience. Members should not embellish the offering of a motion, the entry of a request, the making of a point of order, or the entry of an appeal with any statement of motive or other commentary, and should be aware that such utterances could render the motion, request, point of order, or appeal as untimely. Following these basic standards of practice, I think will foster an atmosphere of mutual institutional respect. It will also ensure against personal confrontation amongst individual members or between members and the presiding officer. It will facilitate members' comprehension of and participation in the business of the House. And I think it will enable the accurate transcriptions of proceedings, and in some will ensure that the comedy that elevates spirited deliberations above mere argument. The chair appreciates the attention of the members to these matters. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1141, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 111, H.R. 1141, a bill to authorize the Secretary of the Interior to study the suitability and feasibility of designating prehistoric, historic, and limestone forest sites on Rota, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, as a unit of the National Park System.
Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. Members will record. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. Will be a 5-minute vote.
We heard House Speaker John Boehner there reviewing some of the rules for conduct on the House floor. This is the last vote of the day on a bill that would authorize the Interior Secretary to study the feasibility of designating forest sites in the Northern Mariana Islands as part of the National Park System. We found out today that the White House will release its budget a week late on Monday, February 13th. Originally, it had been scheduled for release on February 6th. And later this week, the House plans to begin work on repealing part of the health care law dealing with long-term care services. Here's more about what Congress is working on.
Jake Sherman is a congressional reporter for Politico. Both chambers are back for legislative work today. What's on the legislative schedule for this week? Why don't we start with the House?
The House has a number of things it's working on over the next week, and obviously this is a short legislative year, but the FAA renewal is something they're going to be wrestling with over the next couple of days and weeks. It's the FAA saw a partial shutdown last year. Leaders are trying to avoid that in both chambers, so that's going to be coming up. One of the big other items in the House is going to be the highway and infrastructure bill, which leaders are under increasing pressure to wrap up before the end of the year. But in the Senate, also, Senate and House together, there's a conference committee on the payroll tax holiday, which expires by the end of February. It was a huge fight at the end of last year, so that's going to be kind of dominating the dialogue, dominating kind of the overall narrative of Congress over the next couple weeks and months. So that's kind of something that we all have our eyes on.
Well, of course, President Obama comes to the Capitol to deliver his annual State of the Union speech tomorrow. What do members of Congress want to hear?
Well, that's always an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, Republicans always come out of the State of the Union with their president saying we agreed with 90% of what he says and disagree with 90% of what he does. He's expected to kind of use the speech in Kansas where he talked a lot about everyone paying their fair share and shared responsibility. That's supposed to be the theme of this State of the Union, which rings very true with Democrats, and obviously Republicans will say he's simply trying to raise our taxes. So that is something we also expect to hear reprised tomorrow night.
Are there any areas of agreement across the aisle where we might see legislative results in this presidential election year? And if so, what are they? And if not, why not?
I think the biggest thing that we'll see is this payroll tax holiday resolved. Republicans are very wary about fighting this battle again. They knew it was a political loser at the end of the year. Eric Cantor, the majority leader, has said he doesn't understand how politics got in the way of a tax cut. So I think there's general consensus that needs to be extended. Now, it depends where the Republicans are going to pick a fight on this. They want reforms to unemployment insurance, and we'll see if they get those. On top of this, they want to jumpstart the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline again. Unclear if they'll get that. But I think the major piece of legislation that we'll see move over the next 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, is the payroll tax holiday for the rest of the year.
What else are you tracking?
The FAA thing is very interesting. That will be, something that needs to get done. The FAA needs to be funded. Both parties don't want to shut down. And this energy and infrastructure bill is an attempt by Republicans in Congress to jam the president, so to speak, to have him come out against an infrastructure spending project, which they don't think is politically palatable. And members are really yearning and hungry for something to bring home to their constituents in this election year and say, look, we did this. They're sick and tired of saying we have 30 bills that the Senate hasn't acted on. That is something that's not a great message for Republicans. So they really want something to hold on to say this is what we've done and this is how we've tried to improve your lives.
Jake Sherman, thanks for joining us. Jake is a congressional reporter for Politico.
Thanks.
278. The nays are 100, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. Gentlemen, the House will be in order. Members take their conversations off the floor. Where's she from? Take their conversations off the floor. What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to remove my name as co-sponsor of H.R. 3261.
Without objection, so ordered. Does the gentlewoman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, under Rule 22, Clause 7C, I hereby announce my intention to offer a motion to instruct on House Resolution 3630, the conference report to extend payroll tax, unemployment insurance, and sustainable growth rate payments for doctors.
The woman will suspend. House will be in order. Members take their conversations off the floor. The gentlewoman may proceed.
I've finished my statement. Mr. Speaker, I move
the gentlewoman will read her motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the managers on the part of the House at the conference on the disagreeing votes of the two houses on the Senate amendment to the bill, House Resolution 3630, be instructed to file a conference report not later than February 17, 2012.
The gentlewoman's notice will appear in the record.
Thank you.
What purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to remove my name as a co-sponsor of H.R. 3261.
Without objection, so ordered. What purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that my name be removed as a co-sponsor of H.R. 3261.
Without objection. What purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
Mr. Speaker, due to a clerical error, I'd ask that the name Justin Amos be removed as a co-sponsor from 3609.
Without objection, so ordered.
Now prepared to entertain one-minute requests. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I was honored to speak at the March of Life today at the rally on the National Mall earlier today. Thousands of Americans came together in our cause to protect the sanctity of all human life and voice our continued opposition to the decision made in Roe v. Wade. I am reminded each and every day now how precious life is and why we should stand up for its intrinsic value. It is our belief that life is sacred from the moment of conception until the grave. That separates us from so many others in the world. Every abortion is a tragedy, but being pro-life isn't just about conception to birth. It's about the entire existence of a person. It encompasses more than just their physical well-being. A soul cannot flourish, a person cannot prosper if they aren't first allowed to live. Being pro-life is also promoting faith, education, jobs, and the overall quality of life. I will continue to fight against the culture of abortion and fight for the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and provide an extension.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm so grateful that as we prepare to receive the President tomorrow night for his State of the Union address, that we're going to be joined by our colleague, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. The courage that she has shown in her long recovery has been an inspiration to all of us, and I'm proud to call her a friend. Last year, in the aftermath of that terrible and tragic shooting, we came together as a Congress for the State of the Union. We put aside our partisan differences and we convened as a united body. Republicans sat with Democrats, conservative members sat with liberal members, and it was a small but symbolic gesture that this place can rise above partisanship for the greater good of this nation. As co-chair of the House's Center Aisle Caucus, I, along with my fellow co-chairs, are calling on this House to do it again. Tomorrow night, let's sit together. Let's show the nation again that with Gabby in our midst, we can be one rather than be divided. Now, our small but growing caucus, it brings together members who believe that we can discuss issues in a civil and respectful manner. And I hope that all of you, all of my colleagues, will join us in an effort to build on the success of last year and start a new bipartisan tradition in this House.
For what reason does the gentlewoman from Illinois rise?
Ask permission to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with great sadness to report the passing of former Illinois Representative Edward Dowinski. Congressman Dowinski dedicated his life to public service, including 24 years here in the House, serving Illinois' 4th District from 1959 to 1983. He passed away on January 15th at the age of 85. Perhaps best known for his colorful and engaging personality, he went on to serve as the Undersecretary of State for National Security Affairs, and in 1989 he led efforts to renew our country's commitment to its veterans as the first ever Secretary for Veterans Affairs. President George H.W. Bush once said of Ed, a former infantryman in World War II, that he had the skill of a seasoned legislator, the patience of a practiced administrator, the finesse of a diplomat, and the heart of a man who knows what it means to start his government career as a private in the United States Army. Today I join my colleagues in the Illinois delegation in honoring his service to our state and nation. My thoughts and prayers are with his wife, children, and grandchildren. I yield back.
For what reason does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday, retired Army Master Sergeant John F. Baker, Jr., a recipient of the Medal of Honor, died at the age of 66. Master Sergeant Baker was a native of Davenport, Iowa, before relocating to South Carolina. My thoughts and prayers are with his wife, Donnell, and the Baker family. Master Sergeant Baker served in Vietnam and received the Medal of Honor after braving intense communist fire to save the lives of 8 American soldiers on November 5, 1966. Master Sergeant Baker was one of 239 service members to receive our nation's highest honor for conspicuous gallantry and courage during their service in the Vietnam War. He was also the last Army soldier to be awarded the Medal of Honor and have residency in South Carolina. Our country is very grateful for the service of Master Sergeant John Baker. He went well beyond the call of duty, sacrificing so much for this great nation, and will be remembered as a true American hero, along with the late Colonel Chuck Murray of Columbia. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Thank you. For what reason does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
I ask for unanimous consent to speak to the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a family physician for more than 30 years, I've had the privilege of delivering hundreds of babies. I've witnessed the miracle of life itself firsthand, and I believe that every human life at any stage is unique and fully deserving of my protection as a physician. The authority of our government should stand behind the protection of human life. I am proud to be from Louisiana, a state recently ranked #1 on life issues by Americans United for Life. Louisiana has implemented some common sense protections, including a requirement that any woman seeking an abortion must understand how that unborn child is developing, the pain her child will experience during the abortion, and the facts about risk and the alternatives to abortion. Louisiana has banned partial birth abortion and prohibits abortion providers from getting taxpayer dollars to pay for abortion services, and we are making progress. But abortion still happens. In the last 39 years, there have been more than 54 million babies terminated. This is a heartbreaking number, and it is past time to end this scourge and protect human life from conception to natural death. And with that, I yield back.
For what reason does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Do this right according to the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks. I hope you'll pass that on to Speaker Boehner.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh today, as I quite frequently do, and they had a Democrat truck driver, African-American Democrat truck driver, come on, and he talked for about 4 or 5 minutes, which is unusual when you listen to Rush for him to let somebody talk that long. But this fellow was very intelligent, and his remarks were something I wish everybody, including the President, could hear. And he said, you know, I was a big supporter of President Obama, and I voted for him. He says, but when he stopped that pipeline, which would bring thousands of jobs to America, and also maybe help us lower the price of gasoline and diesel fuel, and I presumed he used a lot of diesel fuel, he said that really, really bothered me. And he said when they started talking about inflation, whether or not we had it, he says, I'm telling you, there is inflation. I can't hardly afford to buy groceries or to live anymore. And he said, because of that, I'm not going to vote for President Obama this time. I'm going to vote for whoever is running against him. Now, I hope, since the President is working on his State of the Union speech, he'll take what that African-American intelligent young man said today and take it to heart. It's extremely important that we get that pipeline and start worrying about American jobs. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what reason does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Oh, no. For what reason does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, today there are thousands of Americans who are forced to pay $3.50 a gallon just to fill up their car to get to work. And there are over 14 million other Americans who can't get to work because they don't have jobs. Meanwhile, the little fellow from the desert, Ahmadinejad of Iran, threatens to block the Strait of Hormuz and thus control oil shipments and the international price of oil. The Keystone XL pipeline would bring 700,000 barrels of oil per day from our stable, friendly ally, Canada, and it would bring it down to my district in southeast Texas. It would create at least 20,000 jobs and over 100,000 related jobs. But the administration arbitrarily just said no to jobs, no to energy, no to national security. This pipeline is in the national interest. Build the pipeline. Make unstable Middle Eastern countries irrelevant. Put Americans back to work. Lower the cost of energy. While the administration continues to say no to Americans, Congress has the obligation and legal ability to say yes to America. And that's just the way it is.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what reason does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the spring of 1981, I was applying for the White House Fellows Program, which is a program where you work for the President of the United States for 1 year in one of the executive agencies like the Department of Energy or the Department of the State. Our regional seminar was in Austin, Texas at the LBJ School of Government, and we had a lunch, and I sat at lunch with Hillary Rodham Clinton and a lady named Sarah Weddington, who was the lead attorney in the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court case. Little did I know then, back in 1981, that that case would still be the law of the land. Today, thousands of people from all over the United States came to protest that court case and asked the Congress to help overturn it. I'm a lifetime 95% pro-life voting member, and I pledged to the crowd on the mall that I would do everything I could in Congress to help overturn that decision. Life is precious. Life begins at conception, and we need to recognize that in the Congress of the United States.
For what reason does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fostering job growth for the American people continues to be the #1 job for House Republicans. We certainly don't know what the #1 job is for President Obama, but it doesn't seem to be creating jobs. He talks a good game, but when it comes to delivering, he does nothing. He's refused to approve the Keystone Pipeline, which would immediately create 20,000 jobs, bring down the price of gasoline for hardworking Americans, and ultimately create hundreds of thousands of jobs. You would think with unemployment above 8% for the past 35 months and the Obama economy continuing to produce the nation's worst jobless record since the Great Depression, that we'd see different actions out of the President. Last year, following the House Republican Plan for America's Job Creators, the House passed more than 30 bipartisan bills on behalf of the American people. We outlined them on this card. Each bill is aimed at unleashing the power of our private sector to freely and confidently build, invest, innovate, and expand again, and put millions of Americans back to work. And the Keystone Pipeline is one of those projects that should be done. Unfortunately, 27 of these bipartisan House-passed jobs bills are being ignored or blocked in the Democrat-controlled Senate. The American people are tired of waiting. It's time for Democrats in the Senate and White House to put politics aside and pass these jobs bills. I yield back.
For what reason does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, today we recognize the Roe versus Wade decision and its aftermath. In 1982, my wife and I had the opportunity to work to start what became the 7th crisis pregnancy center in the country. Now they're known as pregnancy care centers. And the work that we did in Rockford, Illinois spawned into Freeport, Illinois and DeKalb, Illinois. We set up these centers so that we could be there to minister to the women who had very difficult decisions to make. The pregnancy care centers throughout the country offer all kinds of service, from ultrasound through social services to working with the women and with the fathers involved in a very difficult situation. We commemorate that today. We honor those who worked so hard in these crisis pregnancy centers. My wife and I are proud to have been two people that helped start the ones in Rockford, Illinois. And I yield back.
Are there further 1-minute requests? Okay. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
The greatest moral issue that this nation faces today is a killing of 4,000 babies every single day through abortion. God cannot and will not continue to bless this land while this atrocious practice continues. The first bill I introduced in this Congress when I was elected in 2007, and in every single Congress since then, has been my Sanctity of Human Life Act, that scientifically describes the beginning of life when a spermatozoa, the sperm cell, enters the cell wall of the oocyte, the egg, to create a one-celled human being, the zygote. Mr. Speaker, it's absolutely critical, if we want to continue to expect God to bless America, that we stop murdering these unborn babies, and I will continue to fight to do so. And I hope my colleagues will see the reality that these are human beings. It's not a glob of tissue. It's a human being created by God that we have to protect their lives. I yield back.
For what reason does the gentleman from Colorado rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this evening in recognition of the over 55 million American lives lost to abortion since the passage of Roe v. Wade 39 years ago. In President Obama's statement celebrating the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, he emphasized the principle that government should not intrude on private family matters. Ironically, on Friday, the Obama administration made an unprecedented decision to require all U.S. employers to cover the cost of contraception, including emergency contraceptive drugs, despite the protests from faith-based institutions such as Catholic hospitals and universities. This is a violation of citizens' religious convictions. It will force the organizations to either violate their deeply held views or pay a heavy fine and terminate health insurance plans. Every human life has inherent value because he or she is made in the image of God. I will continue to fight for the right to life for America's youngest preborn citizens and for freeing taxpayers from being forced to pay for abortions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Are there further one-minute requests? The gentlewoman from Texas.
Yes, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A gentleman by the name of Andrew Adler, located in Atlanta, Georgia, and writing for an Atlanta, Georgia newspaper, offered instructions to the Prime Minister of Israel on how to protect that great nation. He suggested an attack on Hezbollah and Hamas and an attack on Iran, and then he gave number 3, give the go-ahead for U.S.-based Mossad agents to take out a president deemed unfriendly to the nation of Israel. That president, I need not say, happens to be President of the United States now. Words matter. Mr. Adler has been called upon to apologize, and he did. But he has brought shame to Jewish Americans, to Israel, and frankly, the latitude in which he thought that he could talk about assassinating the President of the United States without in any way a suggestion of, if you will, challenge, is an outrage and disgrace. I believe in the First Amendment, but words do matter. We should come together and be unified as a nation, find ways to disagree with each other without raising words that are hostile and devastating. I beg for this nation's leaders to stop calling names and talk about policies and how to build this nation up. I'm outraged, Mr. Adler. An apology is not enough. I yield back.
Are there any further one-minute requests? Okay. The chair lays before the House the following personal requests. Without objection.
Leaves of absence requested for Mr. Clyburn of South Carolina for today, Mr. Culberson of Texas for today, Mr. Davis of Illinois for today, Mr. DeFazio of Oregon for today and the balance of the week, Mr. Farr of California for today and the balance of the week, and Mr. LaTourette of Ohio for today.
Okay. Without objection, the requests are granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee